Thank you, everybody. My name is Heiðar Elberg. I'm the DevOps engineer, DevOps engineering manager at Controlant, and I'm going to talk about sort of our journey to achieving 99.99% delivery success in sort of our mission that we were handed during the COVID-19 epidemic of monitoring vaccines, and share some of the learnings we did and talk a little bit about some of the tools that we used to achieve this. But first, a little bit about Controlant. So Controlant provides what we call the cold chain as a service, and that's comprised of three things. First, it's wireless calibrated IoT devices that capture time, temperature, and location data in real time. The second part is our cloud platform that receives all of the data from the devices, analyzes it, and is delivering mission critical supply chain insights and predictive analytics on demand. The third part is our operational services, which include 24/7 shipment monitoring and response, as well as IoT management and general cost reducing initiatives. When these things come together, what we enable our customers, who are primarily in the pharmaceutical industry, what we enable them to do is to drastically reduce waste in logistics. And we can intervene in cases where there are temperature deviations or the package is headed for the incorrect destination. And we can address these issues before the product spoils. And so we can drastically reduce waste and decrease the environmental footprint and maximize the ROI for our customers. We've been operating for about 15 years. We've got a lot of customers, and our team has grown to about 360 people. And we have monitored an absolutely monumental amount of shipments in the last couple of years. But we came from modest beginnings. It was founded by a group of friends who were studying together in the University of Iceland and participated in an engineering challenge. In doing so, they found that they had a great working relationship, and they started working together, founded Controlant, and developed all kinds of technical engineering solutions to different problems. Anything from monitoring air pressure in the tires of modified Jeeps and trucking lorries and stuff like that, to more sort of temperature and location-based technologies. And in 2010, when H1N1, or the swine flu epidemic, hit the world, that really shifted the focus of Controlant. Controlant got the opportunity to monitor all of the H1N1 vaccines that were in storage in Iceland. And what they found is that using that technology, they could drastically reduce the waste and prevent spoilage. This inadvertently prepared the organization for what would eventually be our role in the COVID-19 pandemic in the vaccine distribution, and really crystallized the goal of the company, which is simply to unleash the power of people and technology to deliver zero waste supply chains for our partners and the planet. So leading up to COVID-19, before that was a thing, we were already in conversation with multiple pharmaceutical customers on using the Control solution for their supply chains. And when COVID-19 actually hit, we quickly became one of the sort of critical suppliers for one of the companies that was developing a COVID-19 vaccine. But at the time, our cloud solution was hosted in an Icelandic data center. The infrastructure was all basically set up and configured and maintained by hand, highly manual. But nonetheless, I mean, the technology was good, the solution was good, and we were picked as a critical supplier for Pfizer to track the COVID-19 vaccine distribution. And so we needed to grow and mature extremely quickly while meeting high compliance requirements and high availability requirements. And thus began our journey to AWS. In a matter of about, I would say 5 months, it depends on a little bit how you look at it, but in 4 or 5 months, we accomplished what would have normally been planned for, a few years, maybe 5 years. And what we managed to do was to containerize just shy of 70 application components. We defined in code highly available infrastructure to run our system on. We used Terraform for this. And we doubled down on all of our efforts to move any state out of the application components themselves into databases and messaging queues such as Apache Kafka and RabbitMQ and others. We migrated terabytes of data to AWS using technology such as DMS, and we started utilizing, for example, RDS for our databases as opposed to maintaining the infrastructure manually. We, as part of all of this, significantly improved and centralized our monitoring and observability capabilities. And finally, on June 2020, we went live in AWS after about 4 hours of downtime. And the results were pretty staggering. So we have thus far monitored the location, temperature, and delivery of every Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine, which to date exceeds 3.3 billion doses delivered. And we did so with 99.997% delivery success rate to over 55,000 destinations worldwide. And I would like to emphasize a little bit how incredible this achievement is. The vaccine has to be stored at -80 degrees Celsius, and it's being shipped to all over the world. And being able to do so with 99.99% success rate is frankly probably impossible without a solution like ours, and obviously other contributing parties such as the designers of the box used in shipments and our logistics partners. But this result is absolutely incredible. So looking at the infrastructure at a glance that is servicing the cloud platform underpinning all of this, we are operating mostly in AWS. We have 6 AWS environments, development and testing environments, public testing and live. And we also have some infrastructure in Azure. On a daily basis, we are running in excess of 1,000 containers, and we are communicating with over 1 million IoT devices globally. And all of that work generates approximately 3 terabytes of logs daily. All of this infrastructure and all of this capability is basically being maintained by 8 DevOps engineers and 1 DBA, along with obviously the other development teams in our R&D department. So this is sort of a good illustration of the power of modern development practices using infrastructure as code and using AWS to host your infrastructure. And we've learned stuff along the way. So obviously, observability, our logs have become critical. Growth hasn't let up. Like, we keep adding new components and new functionality into the system. We keep manufacturing more and more IoT devices, delivering data into the systems, and our customers keep creating more and more shipments that need to be processed. And what we found that in our high compliancy requirement industry, we have needed to put a lot of emphasis on actually collecting and processing the data on processing of data. So we are often required to look at the specific of what transpired with a specific shipment or a specific logging device, even weeks or months in the past. And so this use case of infrequent access with reasonable response time is actually required, which we feel a lot of logging solutions struggle with. Keeping massive amounts of data in highly available indexes is extremely expensive. And this brings us to the total cost of ownership of our observability. Now, the infrastructure itself is fairly predictable, meaning that the clusters aren't necessarily growing a lot, but they are very big or have been very big. In our case, at times, they have been up to 54% of all infrastructure spend. And so if you think about it, we're spending more on the infrastructure that is monitoring our infrastructure than the actual infrastructure performing the work, which is interesting in and of itself. And then the operation of this means that with 6 environments, we have 6 clusters that need maintenance and need patches and need scaling up or down, depending on the circumstances. So there's quite a bit of toil involved for the DevOps engineers in maintaining our centralized logging solution. And they are also called upon for user support to our developers and technical leadership in usage of our current centralized logging solution, or our old centralized logging solution. And so we started looking around for a replacement, and we had some requirements. Obviously, the new solution needed to be highly compliant. ISO 27001 is key, SOC 2, GDPR, and the list goes on. It needed to be extremely scalable. So Controlant in the last 2 years, depending on what metric you're looking at, has needed to scale its operations or its capability of processing data between 10 and 100-fold, depending on what metric you're looking at, and who really knows what happens to tomorrow. We also, with the small team that we have, needed to ensure that we had an easy transition over to the new to a new solution. We have very limited bandwidth of both engineering teams and the DevOps team, and that this also calls for feature parity. As I was alluding to earlier, our organization has become reliant on specific capabilities of our observability systems in order to remain compliant and fulfill our customer requirements. At the same time, we really wanted to reduce the total cost of ownership and the overhead involved in operating the clusters and in supporting the clusters, which has at times been a full position in my team. Enter Coralogix. We quickly saw that Coralogix was a really good fit for Controlant. It is obviously highly compliant, as you can see from the logos at the bottom. They had every certificate that we asked them for ready at hand, and it's been very straightforward to implement. They support open source tooling like Kibana, which we were using before, and so we could even migrate our existing workflows, dashboards, and what have you directly into the Coralogix platform. They provide proactive real-time insights based on the behavior of the systems and the logs that the system is generating. And we can collect data or metric data from the logs without having to store the logs, and we can track this for an extended period of time. But what became really clutch for us were the three next things I'm going to talk about. So, number one, all of the logs that we ingress into Coralogix are ultimately stored in an S3 archive in our AWS account. And the Coralogix platform provides us the capability to query those archived logs way back in time, which they do with lambdas and a little bit of magic sauce. But that gives us the capability to have effectively infinite retention at a very low cost. The second thing that is absolutely key is that we can actually integrate all of our 6 environment into a single sort of Coralogix platform. The data is physically segregated. We are the environments are physically separated and fully compliant, but from a single control plane, you can actually query all 6 environments, and you can correlate data between environments very easily, which is really powerful thing. And then they have the 24/7 in-app support, and their SLA is incredible. We have timed them, and they have been as fast as 15 seconds to respond. And they're not just reading a script, it's real engineers, real competent people who know the solution in and out and know centralized logging practices in and out. And they provide a fantastic support for us. And all of this offloads so much work from my DevOps engineers in supporting Controllant's capability for centralized logging and observability. So the predicted outcome, or the hope that we are in the process of realizing now, is to obviously reduce the total cost of ownership. Coralogix provide all of this capability at a fantastically competitive price, and with all of the capability to scale that we demand of them. The solution is fully managed, and so all of the overhead of maintaining our centralized logging is offloaded from my team and is simply handled by their competent engineers. And the ease of integration has been remarkable. They obviously do a lot of proactive monitoring, and they can watch the system for us, and with the 24/7 app support, in-app support, I rarely even hear about anything related to Coralogix. It just works. And again, emphasizing the capability to centralize the observability data in a single platform spanning 6 environments, thousands of containers, dozens and dozens of services, all in one control plane is extremely powerful. So I'm really excited to see what our engineers will come up in the future. Whether that be generating alerts or collecting metrics based on logs. And the ability for our developers to self-service and get competent support from Coralogix immediately will be absolutely clutch.